we work on eliminating inefficiencies. And the reason why this is a slide today is that when you look at big change programs in organizations, the design of those programs and the way that they're implemented often take some of the unseen inefficiencies that are in the organization as they are before the program. So the program brings in some of those habits, some of those inefficiencies. So if you boil it down and why we work in so many different types of industries, you'll see some examples at the bottom of that slide, is that the concepts fit any organization at all. We came from manufacturing, but we spread our wings to finance, services, call centers, all sorts, because the principle of a lot of this work and things I talk about today are based on exactly the same thing. Anything with people in it have such a large commonality. So all organizations benefit from this type of work. So inefficiencies. Let me just have a look at this. So you know that the topic is about making things stick, why some organizations struggle, a lot of them actually. And if you look at, I'm a keen drawer, so I'll bring this into the webinar itself. So if I draw a graph here and we look at success over time, then what we're talking about here is not if an organization starts at that level of result, then it's a complete failure. What happens, and a lot of you will know this, Hawthorne effect and this type of thing, is that it starts off well with good meaning, but then it starts to drop. And the enthusiasm starts to drop. And what happens in an org, you'll see some of this, and some people will deny it, but there is an improvement in the overall success, whatever we're measuring as part of the program, results, upskilling, all those things. And we're more grateful that there's been some result than what it could have been if it was sustained well, because it could be fantastic. And one of the symptoms of that work and not understanding what to do is you end up starting anew. So if I just change color, something I can do, right? So the alternative to that is making sure that this sustainability is in place. Alternatively, when you get to here, there can be a cultural issue that says this system wasn't for us. We shouldn't have done lean. We shouldn't have done Six Sigma. We shouldn't have done these things. They blame the process and they don't blame some of these inefficiencies that are in the business. So just wanted to make that point, that we're not saying it's a no-goer, nothing happens, it's a car crash at the beginning. It's a gradual decrease, and sometimes we never see it. And sometimes organizations live with it, knowing that in 3 years' time, they're going to have a different type of program. And yet, in my Procter & Gamble days, one of the things that we learned was New Leaf employ other Procter & Gamble people as well for this reason, is that we learned about integrated work systems. Now, I left a long time ago, and those integrated work systems, those programs are still in existence in the organization now, because it was sustainable and it was cleverly designed to put new sub programs inside it. So 3 key traps. So I'm going to talk about 3 key things that we see when we go into organizations. The first one is the wrong level of thinking. Now, what I mean by the wrong level of thinking, or the same level of thinking, is that we see often that organizations will start a program, they'll be halfway through a program, but they always bring their same thinking. And the reason why, excuse the overuse of the word, but why we think thinking is so important is that if you go to the Deming model, a lot of you will know it. If you go to the Deming model, what he said was the way we think drives the systems in the business, and those systems drive the behavior that we have in our individual employees or teams, and that behavior drives the current level of results. So that's Deming's, and we use this a lot at New Leaf, and I suggest you almost have it as a poster in your organization. So the way you think drives the systems behavior, then you get the results. Now I'll just change color because I want to make a couple of points about this, and that is systems. I'm talking about work systems. So I'm not talking about IT systems. I know there's IT systems. We've all got IT systems, but I'm talking about the systems that build the organization's work, and they come in two levels, and even within these levels there's different degrees. So there's hard systems and there's soft systems. So hard systems are the tangible things. So, you know, can you put it in my hand? Can you describe it? Is it a policy? Can you draw a flow chart of it? You know, is it something that's in the HR policy document? Is it something that is up on the notice boards? Is it something that's tangible that's on the machine that makes jars of jam? Is it a checklist? Is it a process for problem solving? All these are hard systems. So those hard systems, you can see them. The soft systems, and the way that I can best describe what I mean by soft systems is, if you ask somebody, why are you doing this? Show me how you do it. And there's no hard system. That's a soft system, right? It's just their answer is, oh, it's just the way we do it around here. So there's soft systems and there's hard systems. So when Deming thought of this, he clearly, and he drew a line here, said systems were work systems, both the ones you can touch and the ones that you can sense. And they're both sets of thinking, they're both sets of systems. So the other key thing here is that only 5% of the results are down to individual or team type behavior. 95% is down to, if you think of hard and soft, it becomes more realistic. 95% of the results are down to those systems that you have in the organization. I've just seen a question there from Kim. What is the model called? Well, we can send you a copy. All we call it is the Deming model. So if you look him up, you might find this, but we've actually got posters of it, probably got a little write-up on it as well. So I've got no official title, but we call it the Deming model. So if you look at this, now the big issue here, change color, because I can. Most situations that aren't effective, inefficient, is when a business looks at changing at this level, because it's only equivalent to 5% of the reasons. And what I mean by this is the organization address the symptoms. The symptoms are down here. What we see in the business is that person doing something a bit unusual, not getting us the result we want. We go to them and say, "Oi, stop doing that, get a better result," and we end up dangerously going round in circles. And I've seen it often. There are examples of organizations communicating with their customers to say, we won't have that quality issue again because we've told them not to do it. Well, that's living in the world of symptoms. That's living in the 5%. So why we think the wrong level of thinking is one of the key traps is that if we open our mind to thinking differently before we jump into addressing, it's almost a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? Before we jump into looking at quick fixes, if we think differently and know that if we make the changes in our systems, the systems drive the behavior that we want. And we have used this today, the wrong level of thinking, because we think people use their existing level of thinking. They may look at their systems, that's great, but often in a panic or a rush, they go down, and even program designs for significant change will still have lots of element of give these guys a checklist and tell them to fill it in. And that isn't a total part of the system. If you think about Deming and his work systems, then it's a combination. The perfect solution is hard. Just need to get my pencil working. The perfect solution is combining hard checklists, processes with soft ways of working, training people differently, and amalgamating those two things. And I will talk about that a little bit later. So one, wrong level of thinking. So I've divided this into three sub reasons, and I've sort of illustrated them in that Deming model to start with. Yes, Kim, it's Deming, 1M. I've broken this down into three, all right? So inappropriate thinking is when we think we need to start at the top. Starting at the top is only communication. So if we go to senior managers and say, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do the other, the best we get is lots of senior managers know what we're going to do or what you're going to do. They don't actually do it. Where the doing is done is in the middle of the organization. So if you get a group of people in the middle of the organization doing things, okay, you've got to get senior management approval, but these are meant to be people, by the way. So if you get a group of people doing things differently in the organization, then you start to get what we call a ripple effect. So they start to make a difference. It's like throwing a pebble in the pond. So you're throwing a pebble in the pond. They're starting to do things differently, raise their skills, start to deliver projects, start to fix simple things, all in their area of influence. Then those ripples start to hit other things in the business. And then in real time, when those ripples, when you start to do activity, you start to see different inefficiencies in the business, and that's a perfect time to address them. Of course, you address them the nearer they are to your area of influence. And I think when you link this to how we think, there's a danger that we think the program has created these issues. But I learned a long time ago that these issues are already in the business. The program has just highlighted them. So without being too wishy-washy about it, we should celebrate the fact that it's identified the issues. The alternative, this is this holistic, organic approach, which we fully support at New Leaf. This is a clear alternative, and I've had many debates of a linear approach of must do one, then do two, then do three, then do four. We do one, we tick it off. We do two, tick it off. By the time we've done one and two, the things that have been happening in three should have been addressed, because we've realized that they're getting highlighted in this organic approach. And that's why we sort of have to balance the linear approach to an improvement program with the organic, holistic approach. The second point there is the new thinking to enable change of the work system. So I've already talked about that with the Deming diagram. And then the other part there, the third part, I've got another diagram to talk you through. And the thinking isn't always at the right level. So if we get together in an organization and start to think differently, we've got to think in a sequence. So my diagram here, this isn't Deming, this is me, right? So I drew this, and again, it's based on a graph, but you've got the y-axis, which I've called granulation, say a bit more about that in a minute. And then you've got bandwidth of thinking. So the x-axis is showing how much thinking, how broad a thinking should we be. So obviously, at the bottom of this, what I call a funnel, at the bottom of that funnel, you've got less room for new thinking. It's basically closed. It's either this way or it's that way. We must do it like that. We have to do it like this. Up here, it's much broader. We can play with lots of different ideas, explore new ways of doing things. I've called it conceptual. So let's have a look at this granulation again. So if I draw big lumps of activity, as you go down the funnel, just using the granulation. I've only picked up the word granulation because it's a new trendy word, isn't it? It's about, you know, we're in the fine granuled parts of the situation. I hear the word a lot, so I've decided to use it. So if you think about the amount of detail, the amount of thinking involved, what you've got down at the bottom is you've got the tiny elements of doing things, then you've got the tactical. So you've got the doing, you've got the tactical. This is more about what tool are we going to use for this? What checklist have we got? What problem solving tool are we going to use? What room are we going to use for morning meetings? What are we going to do on one-to-ones? That's much more the tactical thing. What we've got at a higher level, broader opportunities, is the strategic thinking. You know, what programs are we going to put across all of the organization? What end results are we trying, what business results are we trying to achieve? And right up here, you've got the, you know, let's do something completely different. Let's try new things. But of course, the conceptual stage, an organization can't stay there because nothing happens. Has lots of great ideas, but it doesn't work its way down to having proper strategies, the tools and techniques which live, in my world anyway, live in the tactical stage, and then you get into the doing of the doing. One of the challenges for organizations, and one of the things that we do see, is a lot of the thinking is down here. So they will come up with a new tool. Let's put something in the call center. Let's put a new process in for that. Let's put a new tool in. Let's have some problem solving activities. Or unfortunately, it lives in the, can you do this differently, please? So that's one of the challenges. So a good program, if you imagine this as a ladder, let's say, just for you know, comic purposes. So if you imagine that, the skill of being able to think differently is the organization knowing to be in one of these four categories at the right time. Okay, good. So that illustrates, I think, when we talk about the appropriate thinking or not, or the wrong level of thinking, it fits into these categories. Are we really thinking about systems? And are we really thinking through a process of wide open opportunities down to nitty-gritty closed actions? And it's looking at the right thinking at the right time.